And just real quick, we moved out here almost 4 years ago. Kyle was one of the first people that came alongside of us and was a great encouragement to us. And one of the things that you can tell about a person is if they're consistent over time, then they're the real deal. And Kyle is definitely the real deal. He's been true and true patriot all the way, a very consistent person. And so that's why we feel blessed by his friendship. And so I'm honored to be able to pray for us tonight. Please excuse my dress. I didn't realize I was going to be up front. I was just going to be in the back. But let's bow our heads and let's pray. Jesus, I want to thank you. John chapter 14, verse 28 says this. He said this to your disciples. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives. So do not let your heart be troubled and do not be afraid. Father, I want to thank you that now is not the time for us to be afraid. But now is the time for us, your people, to step into it. I thank you for guys like Kyle, Lord, whose greatest desire is to see this great nation be just that, again, great. So I pray that you would bless him, pray that you would bless tonight's conversation, and you bless us, and we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
So before we get started, I do this every time I'm at the church. Hang on 1 second, Pastor Lindsay. Pastor Lindsay has always been a great man to me. He's opened his church up to me. I always ask if you've got $1, $5, whatever it is, put it in that box back there on the table. This is for you to start it.
Thank you.
That's our gratitude for the pastor taking his own time, his own electricity, and helping us out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Kyle K.D. Sims. I think most of y'all know me. I'm in the political world, but I'm also an activist for better terms. That I'm fighting for these children, I'm fighting for our grandchildren, and I'm fighting for your children.
Thank you.
So sometimes it's a tough road. Sometimes we get beat up, but we're going to keep plugging ahead, and we're going to keep taking people down that do not want to save these kids. I brought Kambree, as I said a while ago. I'm going to let Kambree start, if she doesn't mind. And she's got a lot of good notes, a lot of good information. So like I said, we're going to talk about 20, 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up. And we want y'all to get involved and start asking your questions. Hopefully we've got those answers, but if we don't, we'll get them. So welcome, and thank y'all for coming.
Well, thank y'all for being here. I have a ton of information. I'm going to skip through some of this type of stuff. I mean, I know we're talking about stuff that's taking place in Texas. I'm a born and bred Texan. I'm from Garland, and I live in Frisco now. But a couple years ago, we moved back from California to Frisco because my husband's from California. But we came back home, and I was excited to get back to this state because I just left a state that was indoctrinating my children. I'll say this now. She's getting better, my daughter Emma. She's 16 years old now. But when we moved here, she was a little liberal. I saw what the teachers could do in these schools, and it blew my mind. The activists that were teaching her in schools actually started to scare me to death with some of the things that she was coming home and telling me. I was wrong, she was right. She didn't like what I was doing. I was excited to come back here to Texas because this wasn't happening here. I'll be honest with you, what's taking place in Texas, people in California are not aware of at all. What's taking place in Texas, and even with our children, parents are not aware of. Because we are socially, politically aligned, we understand what's happening all over in each different school. This is happening with the gender ideology. It's happening in Frisco. It's happening in Prosper. McKinney is a flipping mess right now. But there's a lot of things that are taking place in this state, and we are a super majority state, so it blows my mind that we have a Republican governor, we have a Republican House, and we have a Republican Senate, and we have teachers down in Houston ISD sitting there begging the school district for somebody to come in and please help their child because the teacher's molesting them and the teacher is assaulting them. And they're begging, and their exact words words are, I'm coming on behalf of my child. I never thought in a million years I would move back home and find this at all, whatsoever. There is something that's taking place in Texas, and I'm finding this out as I go. Once I found out what was happening here, I said, okay, fine, I'm gonna go expose everything. Just because I've kind of been in the arena of activism for the past 5 or 6 years, and it was huge in California because we ticked a lot of liberals off, but that was okay. We made a lot of people aware that we do exist, and we're here, and we're not going away. But once I came back here, and I decided to start doing my own show, I was like, I'm gonna do a podcast. I'm gonna go find out what's happening. I wanna go look all over the state of Texas and see what's happening in the state. Texas Scorecard called me, so I do a show with Texas Scorecard now. And I have just recently sat down with the superintendent in Round Rock ISD. You guys are aware of what's happening in Round Rock ISD. And if you're not aware, it's insane what is happening there. But I learned something by going and looking into what's happening in these cities. After word got out that I was talking to different people in different areas, I had school board members call me. I had a Round Rock ISD school board member call me. I had a superintendent call me and say, hey, can you come to my school? Because I want to sit down and talk to you about what's happening and what I'm not doing. So I sat down with the Round Rock ISD superintendent, and I found out what was happening in the school district. Not only were they transitioning children, they have the ability, and you're in the state of Texas, to where if a child, especially in the Austin area, and when I say it's, I can only talk about the specific areas that I know it's definitely happening, but if they are sending out emails to teachers and saying, if a child wants to transition and they want to be called a different name, then you talk to that child by their name they want to be identified as. But when you email the parents, make sure they use their birth name. So the teachers are emailing parents talking about their child by the name that's on the birth certificate, but then they're talking with the children at the school by their specific pronoun or what they want to be identified as. I'm going to be meeting with the Mama Bears Rising. I know a lot of y'all know who those ladies are, but I sat and had a conversation with them recently, and there are psychiatrists who are coming into these school districts right now. And they have the ability to not diagnose. And this is where you, as being in the city, you have to look for these key words. There's keywords these school districts are using. There's keywords that people in city council are using. The psychiatrists can affirm a child's gender. They can affirm it, which means they're coming in, they're doing an analysis on the child. The child says, I want to transition, and they're affirming that child's gender. They're going around the parent's back. Now, down in the Austin area, if a child comes and says, I want to transition to be a boy, they will bring the psychiatrist in. They will immediately go to an LGBTQ organization because they're going to start the transitioning process. That's happening. Another thing that's happening.
This is kind of like the Jeff Younger case. Kind of similar, but they're doing it in the schools. Like the psychiatrist can come into the school and they're not allowed to notify the parents that a psychiatrist is doing an assessment on your child to see if they want to be transitioned. I mean, this is starting at the age of 1 year old. The second thing, so the verbiage that you need to really look for is, because here's the thing, these liberals, man, they're going to tell you everything. Because when a Democrat says something, you believe them. When these crazy radical teachers on TikTok start talking, believe them. You have to look for safe teacher. Are you an unsafe parent? Are you an unsafe adult? If you look like you're a parent that's an unsafe parent, they are telling the children to go find a safe teacher at that school. From that point on, they can start calling CPS. They can start making the decisions. I mean, I know this stuff, people start shaking their head. There's another thing that's happening in Texas that nobody's even talking about. Because when I spoke with the fathers who were speaking up for their children in Round Rock, and when I talked to them, and they told me a month later, the police came to their house and arrested them and ransacked their house.
I said, wait, what? They said, yes, I was speaking up for my children. They didn't want me to speak, so they arrested me. A month later, I said, who arrested you? He said, Round Rock ISD Police Department. Did you catch that? Okay. They're weaponizing the police. Wait a minute. There is Round Rock Police Department, okay? And there is Round Rock ISD Police Department. There are two. There are two different departments. But guess who told the Round Rock ISD police to go arrest the parents? The school board members. These people are some of the most powerful people in the state of Texas right now, and they don't even get paid to do their job. They got angry at the parents in Round Rock, and guess what they did in retaliation? They raised their taxes, their taxes. They increased it. Was it property taxes? They increased their property taxes because they got mad and they got angry. This is what's happening inside our schools. And I can't remember who else I was talking to. Houston, I think Houston has their own ISD police force. And what it scares me, because typically when we started seeing this stuff happening down south in the Houston and the Austin area, it typically was starting to see it funnel over up here.
Well, even closer, McKinney PD and Prosper PD, when they're at our board meetings, they're actually employed under the school board. That's what's scary about it.
And they don't have their own police force yet?
They might as well, because the tyranny that we're seeing at the school board meetings, they're acting like unfortunately rogue police officers. Yep. I mean, you can't clap in a school board meeting in some areas. McKinney's one of them. If you raise your hand to clap, they will keep you and have you escort out of the meeting and ban you from being on property. We pay taxes.
Well, think about this. This is the prime opportunity for them to be able to go hire the type of school police force that they want.
Absolutely.
Which are going to be polar opposite to the regular police force that are in city police officers. So, I mean, this is happening all over the state of Texas right now. I'm finding out, I've been asking questions of how is this starting? How is the footprint becoming so big in these little bitty small cities that things are sliding right underneath our nose? Well, the first thing that we know is they started with the city councils. Well, first was the mayors. That was the running joke when I lived in California. It's like, we have mayors that are running in Texas, and no one shows up to vote for mayor, and that's how we slide them underneath your nose. We have you so focused on what's going on in Washington, D.C., what's the latest scandal, what's happening here that we're going to slide it. So they started with the mayors, and it worked. Look at Dallas. Look, how do you think all these little bitty cities started flipping blue? No one showed up to vote, and the Democrats know that. Here's the thing, I know that so many people have said this, and I know you have said this back there. She said, Democrats fight to win, Republicans fight to not lose. And that is what is happening. Because right now I'm seeing parents speak up, school board members speak up, and then I'm wondering what the heck is going on down in Austin. I'm like, it starts from the top down. And that is where it's actually starting. We have, even though we are not a union state, we have unions infiltrating our school districts. In Houston, they're literally just certifying teachers left and right. And the teachers that they're certifying are coming from the most woke left organization in the United States of America. They don't even have to go to school to be able to teach kids. All they have to do is be able to go through the certification process, and they're lining them up and they're bringing them in left and right.
Yeah. And Chad, quick question. Do you remember how many voted in your election last year?
Voted for me was about 1,300 to 1,400.
Okay, so
The total election would have been about 2,000.
So Chad Green is our only conservative on the board in McKinney. The rest of them are all liberal. So understand that, folks. McKinney's over 200,000 people. You got less than 2,000 people that voted in that election. In the mayor's race last year that I was involved in, less than 20,000 people voted. And we wonder why we got a liberal mayor. This is why, because we don't vote. I talk to people all the time every day, especially in November and May. They walk up to the voting booth and ask me who to vote for. Folks, we have to get educated. We have to do our research. We can't keep voting for people that we don't know what we're voting for. This is what causes tyranny. It causes socialism. This is why we all preach daily that you have to get involved. You have to know what you're doing.
Rachel Elliott mentioned that there's only 3.5% that voted in the last election.
Yeah,
in McKinney. And then also, as far as the cops, the police having their own ISD police, that's what you call SROs, is what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, school resource officer.
Yeah, that is the police of the
We have a
school.
lot of funding that's coming into the state, and the federal government is giving funding like the ESSA and the ESSER. A lot of people are not paying attention and may not be aware of this funding. Some of you are shaking your head. Well, that money comes with the federal education. They're sliding in education into that funding. I just got back this past week from sitting down in an hour interview with a superintendent in Peaster, Texas. Peaster, I see his name's Lance Johnson.
Yep.
Absolutely amazing. He refused the lockdown. He refused to mask the children. He never allowed the kids to miss a day of school whatsoever. He defied everything. If a book comes in and it's not supposed to be there, he threw it. He has the school board members. I mean, the school board members are so in line that if you were even a slight bit woke, you're not hired for the job. At all. That let me know right then and there, these superintendents, the principals do not have to comply at all. Because he didn't. Yes, he had Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Texas Tribune, everybody standing outside across the street calling him a murderer, everything. But he's like, I'm not going to abuse these children. And you know what? They did nothing to him. They did absolutely nothing.
And so I'll look straight into the camera when I say this. Dr. Rick McDaniel, McKinney, Texas, you can do something with the books, and you can stop the CRT, and you can stop the NDS. And to the superintendent board and Prosper, boy, I'll tell you what, y'all can do something too. And it's sad. How many know what happened in Prosper? Everybody? Pretty much everybody? Well, it's about to get a lot worse, because there's more victims coming. There's more coming. They've got one $5 million lawsuit right now they just got slapped with. There's going to be more coming. So this is why it's so important to get involved. And we live in McKinney, my wife and I, but that doesn't mean we don't get involved in other districts. We need an army of conservatives to get involved in this movement. It's not just your city. I was in White Rock, Texas, 35 miles northeast here last night. We were outnumbered 10-1. These people are clueless and think it's okay to lock your children in a school and not give parents access to those kids. If they get sick, they bring them out to the car to eat. You can't take them a sack lunch. You can't bring them lunch from McDonald's. If you want to sit down with a counselor, you have to schedule that several days in advance. Folks, these are children. These are not prisoners. But they're being treated as prisoners because we don't get off our lazy butts and get involved. That's what we have to do. And that's why we preach daily. Kambree preaches it every day on Twitter. We have to get involved. And we have to be involved in these child's lives if we're going to save them. If not, they will not have the future that we had growing up. It's just that simple.
And one of the teachers said we have one job as an elementary school teacher. She said our job is to shape these children. That said it right then and there. So I wanted to know, typically when you see these superintendents making $1 million, having $1 million contract, yes, some of the superintendents have $1 million contracts. I always say follow the money. And that will follow the money. School board members, I don't care. School board members, superintendents, principals, follow money, even coaches. We even go there too. What is happening and how, let's talk about what is the most conservative city in the conservative county in the state of Texas? Montgomery, right? Montgomery, Texas has been known as the most conservative county in the state of Texas. So I asked my girlfriend, who is making parents aware down there, in the most conservative county in Texas, which she said, oh, this would never ever come here. I said, what is happening there? They said, we're finding that people from California and we're finding that millionaires are moving into these small areas strategically. They're moving into these small areas. They're putting a lot of money in these areas, but the first thing that they gun for is who's their state representative. And that's how they're going in, and they're getting their money involved in politics. Now they're starting to go into these areas, and they're asking, who's on your school board? And they're in alignment with the school board members. So they're bringing in the money, and they're buying up land, and that's what's happening all over the state. And I've talked about 4 or 5 different people, and they said, yep, we just had a guy come in and they start throwing it at their local politicians. Not necessarily the federal politicians, but they're throwing it at their local politicians here in the state.
Do you wonder why we have so many apartments in McKinney, in Conner County? Follow the money. Follow the money. It's all your developers tied into your city council and your mayor.
And your governor.
And your governor. That's why you get the same stuff over and over, especially in McKinney. This is not happening. I mean, there's a reason behind it. There's a good reason behind it. And y'all hear me talk about it all the time, follow the money. When you start going down that rabbit hole, it's almost an endless rabbit hole of what you're going to find. And it's very valuable information that each of you need to know.
You guys have to start keeping an eye on PTA. They just had their huge convention here. It was at the Gaylord Texan. And they wanted to raise the fees of $1.75 to $2.15 more. And that was due to the fact they wanted to bring in the diversity and equity and gender into the PTA. And people are not paying attention to all of the areas and the different facets of the school that they're starting to insert themselves in. There's really not one area that has anything to do with the schools where they're not inserting themselves in. I mean, my daughter is a librarian last year. She went nuts. The parents just drove her crazy because she was a cisgender, queer something. I can't even keep up with all the different things. But she couldn't handle the parents wanting to come in and find out what's happening in these books. And she lost it. She still has her job, but actually lost her mind at school. Just went crazy. And I remember the kids going, oh my goodness, this teacher has just gone mad. But the other thing that is happening is teachers are scared to speak up. They're petrified to speak up because they don't want to be persecuted. There's a situation that is a current situation taking place in the district right now, and I won't say the name. But the person on the school board came to me and said, we have a situation on our hands. And this is down in South Texas, more close to the border. Actually, it's a teacher. And she said, there is a child at the school who sleeps with the white mommy. And he's not from America. He had to have been crossed. They must have illegally crossed him over the border. It scared her because she could see the signs of abuse, sexual abuse. And she thought this child was being trafficked. Petrified that this child was being trafficked. And this is still happening like right now. So of course she did what was right, is she went to the principal and said, this child's being trafficked. He calls her his white mommy. His story's not adding up. I think he's being sexually, I think he's there as for sexual favors for this mom because he sleeps with her every single night. And the principal said, let me talk to him. Well, basically what that principal did is the principal coached that child. So when CPS came in, that the child would know what to say to make CPS leave, make the police force leave, because they don't want the unwanted attention at that school. So now we have principals that are coaching children who could possibly be abused on what to say if the police show up, because they want to make sure that it doesn't bring any sort of negative attention to the school or raise any red flags. That's happening now, just south of Austin, even south of San Antonio. So this is how deep the sickness and the corruption is in our schools, is to where they're coddling child molesters because they don't want the attention on the school. That just lets me know if he's covering that up, I can't imagine what else he's covering up at the school right now and how many other kids are in the exact same situations. But parents have to be aware of this type of stuff. But they're scared to come forward because they're afraid they're going to get arrested. When parents were called domestic terrorists, we tell you, it scared a lot of people. There's a few of us that have no fear, will just walk in. It's like, do whatever you want to do, but I'm going to stand up for these kids regardless. But the government is doing everything they can to insert themselves into our lives to scare you. If you speak up and you own a company, now we're going to be afraid that the IRS is going to come get you because your name is out there. Now we're going to be afraid that the teacher's going to be able to call CPS and report you for something, which has already happened in the city of Frisco. They got concerned about a child because the child wasn't, the parents didn't care for the pronouns, and CPS showed up at somebody's house. They're already starting to call authorities on some of these parents because they're not in line with the way that they think. It's right here in our backyard.
And folks, this is all tied to federal dollars. Federal dollars. That's what's driving all this, the socialist agenda. You want to talk about the border yet?
I haven't even talked about the border yet.
So, how many of y'all have been to the border? So, as I tell everybody, if you haven't been to the border, TV doesn't do it any justice. It really doesn't. I went several times last year, Mark and I just got back, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Folks, if you don't think that border is, if that's not a designed idea, you're not awake. It is designed to take this country over. The last night we were down there, we could have stayed in there and filmed all night long. But within a half an hour, we saw 20 people come across one big group. It was 19 males, 1 female, and 1 child that appeared to be 5 to 7 years old. She wasn't with the female, she was with the males. So, I've told this many times, but and it's happened every time I've been down. They come across the river, they walk down the fence line until there's an opening where the National Guard is. National Guard gives them water, they give them snacks. They call Border Patrol to come get them. It may be 30 minutes, it may be 6 hours. You just don't know. They take them to a processing center in Eagle Pass, or Del Rio. They clothe them, they bathe them, they give them their shoes. They don't have a phone, they give them a phone. And they basically ask them where they want to go. Any of you go through TSA check line at any airport without having any papers? They do. They do it right next to an Air Force base. They actually do it on the Air Force base. Big 737s. They don't have IDs on them, a lot of them don't. But they're in the middle of our country. They're right here in McKinney, Texas. They're in Prosper, Texas. They're in Frisco, Texas. Who are these people? Where'd they come from? What do they want? Some of them won't work. A lot of them don't want work. They want to get your children, your grandchildren. This is why you have to pay attention. And there's so much information that we have that it will blow your mind. But this is why I post so much on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, because that's the platform where everybody is. And doing stuff like this, we have to get the knowledge out. It's time to put on your sword and start fighting. If we don't, we're going to lose this state. When we lose this state, you can kiss USA goodbye, because it's history. It's gone. There is no place to go. Yeah, we've got some other states fighting, like South Dakota and Florida, but Texas is the backbone of this nation right now. So we need to get involved.
I can say this for a fact. Biden's not incompetent when it comes to our southern border. I know, it sounds crazy, right? Because he's kind of crazy. He's not incompetent. He has a goal, and that's to dismantle the immigration system. That's the end goal here, is to dismantle it all. So many changes, and I like to tell people all the changes that have been made, because I work with AFPI, American First Policy Institute, so I get to see, I work policy. So I get to see a lot of policy. These are folks that y'all all know their names. Everyone worked out at the White House. So they started giving me some stats of what's happening at the southern border, because I don't see it on the news, and I'm like, what's going on? I call my uncle. My uncle was an undercover border agent for 40 years down in South Texas. I rarely talk about him. If anything is live, because people will eventually try to figure out who he is, because his house has been burned down 4 times, and his cows have been mutilated because the cartels know exactly who he is. He has 400 identities. It's fascinating. I wish one day he'd come out and talk. But Biden has done some things, and this is devastating to Texas. I spoke with my girlfriend We filmed, and she told me what was happening, of things that were of what was happening with these children that were crossing the border. There's rape trees between the cartels and between the smugglers. They see how many women and children they can rape. They hang their underwear on the trees, and you pass them when they're coming up. I know Sarah Carter, we were on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and she was just on, I think, Sean Hannity the other night, or Tucker. She was talking about what's happening with these children, even in the state of Texas, what they're doing right now. One of the biggest things the cartel is doing, other than fentanyl, is they are trafficking children for organs. She's the only person that's actually been talking about this. And she's like, you guys, I'm about to do a story that's going to make everyone sick. And she was talking to a smuggler. She said the smugglers are in all 50 states, and they're taking the children and they're harvesting their organs. So how are these people getting into the state of Texas so easy? Let me tell you what the Biden administration is doing. The Biden administration has changed the DOJ process. The DOJ process was a illegal came across the border, and then they would have to show up in court. No, then the border agent would allow asylum officers to allow them to come in. Well, about 70% of people were allowed or are being allowed across the border as asylum seekers. And then after they are brought in, they go to a judge. Well, Biden has changed all this. This is the new process. An asylum officer lets them in. They're going to skip the DOJ judge, right? Now, they're not going to have to go to a DOJ judge. What they're doing is they're hiring citizen and immigration employees to make the decision if the person should be in the United States or even in the state of Texas. So they're skipping the process of going to a judge, and they have regular employees that have no idea if the person should be here. They're not a judge. They have no experience whatsoever. They're making a decision. Well, one of the judges, the DOJ judges, actually looked at a lot of the cases that these employees, and this is the purpose of just bringing them in, is allowing an employee to say, yes, they can come in, yes, they can come in. The DOJ judge looked at 100% of the cases and said 70% of the cases he looked at, they should have never been allowed into the United States of America ever. So this is how they're dismantling the immigration system, is they're removing the judges from the process. They're bringing employees in who have no experience, don't know law whatsoever. They just work for the federal government, and they're going to say, oh yes, welcome to the United States of America. Here you go in. And then what they're doing is they're putting them on a path forward to citizenship or even getting their green card. So that's what the Biden administration is doing right now. They changed everything, but for some reason, it's just, it's not on the news, and I can't believe that even with some of the news, like Newsmax and Fox, hasn't even picked that up, because people are not aware that these people are coming in and they're skipping the DOJ. They say they have bracelets and all that stuff to kind of track them. Well, eventually they're going to be going back to an employee, a federal employee, not an actual judge.
And most of you probably know this, but between Oklahoma, well, all the way up north actually, from on 75 all the way down, all the way up. Houston and Dallas are number 1, number 2 for sex trafficking and drug trafficking. Sheriff Skinner was on TV on Fox just yesterday. The increase in fentanyl deaths in this state is skyrocketing. And I'm sure y'all saw an ads coming out in a little candy. It looks like little salt candy now. So, you know, parents wonder how their kids get a hold of this. These pain pills, Oxycontin, Tramadol, whatever it may be, they're lacing this with fentanyl right now. So we need to be aware of what our children are taking, where they're getting it from, and who they're hanging out with, because that is by design, people. It's designed to kill this society and bring another society in here. There's no doubt about it. Just like Kambree said, you know, Biden's not stupid when it comes to border. They know what the agenda is. The agenda is to get rid of you. That's what the agenda is.
My dad's friends lives up in Oklahoma, and since marijuana is legal up there, he started to grow some plants. And he had a couple of guys come over to his land. He owns about 200 acres, and they said, if I were you, I suggest you stop growing that. The guy was like, what? He goes, if I were you, I suggest you stop growing that. two Hispanic guys. He didn't understand. He didn't stop because he thought, well, I don't know who these guys are. I don't know them from Adam. They came back a couple months ago with guns, and they said, this is the last time we're going to tell you to stop growing on your land. He goes, who the are you? He goes, Sonora Cartel. We have the cartel in our backyards, ladies, gentlemen, and they look just like you and I. And they're coming to American citizens and they're telling them, you better stop. And they lived right next to his property. And they threatened him, if you do this, and he believed them. He believed that if he didn't stop growing, they were going to kill him. Because they don't care. These people are ruthless.
And they will.
They're ruthless. They're disgusting, horrible. They're animals. That's what they are. But that's happening. And he said that they are all over the United States. So if somebody's doing something they don't want them to do, they will come kindly to ask them first and second time, and the third time, they're done. They'll kill them. So there's no telling how much fentanyl is even in this country, considering they're just walking across the border and they already have marijuana plantations all over Oklahoma. I believe this is internally just as much as it is coming across the border. There's no telling how much, because when Sarah, I don't know if you watched that interview, when Sarah said that, where do you guys operate? They said, we're in all 50 states.
Yep. All 50 states, people. And they're right here in our backyard, just like Kambree said. They're right here in Collin County.
Yep.
Do we know who they are? No. But I bet they know who we are. This is why I preach and preach and preach about getting involved. There's so many different things going on in our country right now that we don't have enough people to address what's going on. But you need to pick one thing and you need to do it. Whether it's making phone calls or attending meetings or running for school board, running for council, whatever it may be, we've got to take our country back. And we've got to take our state back. And for most of you who are in Collins or Denton County, we need to take our counties back. Their corruption is deep. You need to look at your county commissioner court. You need to look at your council, your school board, and you need to get involved. If you're not awake yet, I hope you wake up soon. Because if you're not awake, you're in for a rude awakening. How many immigrants we got in here? I know we got one. Cuba.
I was born here. My family's from Cuba.
But they're from Cuba.
Yeah. I'm first generation.
Jackie?
Panama, but I didn't leave anything. I just came to college
Right.
a million years ago. But it's pretty much.
But you're glad you're here, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. And it took me forever to get my citizenship. So you don't need to talk to me about that.
Yeah.
It's like,
We need to protect our land. We need to protect our sovereignty. That's what this is all about.
A lot of people don't know by 2023, Biden has $4.3 billion allocated to go towards attorneys to defend illegals in the United States.
Good money.
So this stuff is happening. People aren't paying attention to what's in the bills. I do. It's the biggest socialist bill I've ever seen in my entire life, the bill that was just recently passed. It's going to be even worse, especially with the kind of climate change corpse that is happening. The Democrats have no fear. They're coming for us with a vengeance. And I believe that with all my heart. They're going to be targeting different areas of Texas. Right now, they want Texans. Actually, I've been saying this wrong. They want people. They're ready for war. They're ready for a civil war. They've been trying to push us in that direction. From what I understand of Biden's speech tonight, from what I've read, is they've been poking the belly. And they want us to make the first move. And right now, typically when I said this whenever Biden ran, there's no need for Trump to say anything. All you have to do is let Biden talk and he'll destroy himself. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep speaking up. We have to keep standing up. But the left are going to destroy themselves because they're great at it. They fight. I wish we could fight like, we have to fight fire like they fight. So I would say fight fire with fire, because eventually they will back down. One of the issues we have to really address in the state of Texas, we can blame the Democrats until we're blue in the face. We have a conservative governor, we have a conservative Senate, and we have a conservative House, but the Democrats are calling the shots in Austin. Everything can be done by the stroke of a pen. Governor Abbott can change and do anything in a second, and he's not. That needs to raise a lot of red flags to find out why are Republicans in the state of Texas giving Democrats chairman positions. They're killing our bills.
They're all for it.
They're killing our bills here, and we have to do. That's where we really have to focus if we want a lot of change to take place. But Abbott is easy to move. You know why? He can't handle pressure. I have a friend that's actually works for him. We can nudge him and push him in the direction. Eventually, he will cave, but it takes a major force for that to happen.
Well, and I know several of you have been down to Austin many times. If you haven't been to Austin to testify, or if you haven't been to Austin to even meet your legislators, knock on their door, go in and have a conversation with them, I encourage you strongly to do that. Again, you don't know what you're voting for if you don't know that person. Is it a pain? Yes, it's a pain. Is it tiring? Absolutely. But that's our house. We pay those legislators. And as Kambree said, the most important thing we can do is keep pressure on our legislators and our governor. A Democrat oversees the Education Committee. I made it. I mean, we wonder why our education system is broken. When are we going to get people in office that has courage,
Right.
that is not spineless and they have backbone, that they'll stand up to this socialist crap going on? And we wonder why we are where we are. There's more Democrats that control chairs than Republicans. I had a representative, Mark had a representative tell him the other day, he questioned about Democratic chairs. He said, I don't care. This is the Republican folks. Why don't we vote for them? There's other apples in that basket that we can vote for. It doesn't have to be status quo every election. Because that's what we're doing right now. We've been doing it for years. Do I rock the boat? You damn right I rock the boat. And I'm going to keep rocking that boat. Because I'm sick and tired of the same crap over and over every May and every November. We have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to speak our mind. We have to do our research more than any time in our life. Research right now. Just like Kambree said, you need to know what's in these bills. You need to read the language of them. You need to see how much pork they put in them. There's no reason that Abbott can't call for the first 60 days of session can only be what Abbott puts on the books. When's the last time Abbott put something on the books? Anybody know? We don't, because he hasn't. So come January, Abbott could put a lot of stuff on those books, and he could stroke that pen and he could sign every one of our platforms into law. But I bet you every bit of money I got on me right now, that's not going to happen. Because we're not putting the pressure on it. We're not putting the pressure on our legislators. And I'll call out just as many Republicans as I do Democrats for that reason. We have to bump it down, we have to get after it.
A lot of people are not aware of what Governor Abbott has done. You know how Facebook has changed everything over to Meta? Since we welcomed Meta to the state of Texas, they have brought in 2 data centers. Basically, Governor Abbott brought Facebook into the state of Texas. So this will make sense at why a lot of things are starting to change when it comes to our children and the ideology. We're welcoming it to the state. Governor Abbott is bringing it to the state. So Meta came here. Their community project is girls. Young teenage girls. That is what Meta is focusing on in the DFW airport area. They're investing in schools. Facebook is investing, or Meta is investigating in education in Texas. Their goal is to, and I wrote it down, equip girls to navigate gender, economic, social barriers. They want them very independent. And they want them so independent that they undermine authorities, which is actually even their parents. They're fighting parents. Meta, Facebook, actually wrote a letter in the state of Texas supporting child mutilation. If you guys think that Planned Parenthood is just about abortion, think again. Guess what they're dipping into, and guess what they've been dipping into since 2017? transitioning children, puberty blockers. They say you have to be 16 years old in the state of Texas to get consent, to not have consent. They're actually giving some of these puberty blockers to 16-year-old girls. There are teenagers that have the ability to walk into Planned Parenthood right now, and they're already starting to transition without their parents even knowing. This is happening. Now, Meta, Facebook, is supporting this. They don't like that parents are against child mutilation. So this is what Governor Abbott did. He gave them 75% off their property tax. He cut their property tax to 75% for 10 years. That's what Facebook is getting to come to Texas. And people want to wonder why Texas is getting such a woke ideology. We're literally begging them to come here, and then we're giving them a huge tax break. That's what's happening. Did you know that the state of Texas has the most gender transition clinics than any other state in the country?
Yes.
Yes, we do. That shocked me when I found out. I said, what? They said, yes, we do. We have the most transition clinics. If we want to say that Democrats are turning our state a little bit more blue, it's wrong. Texas is. Texas is turning our state a little bit more blue. We have to think like a Democrat. We have to act like a Democrat. We have to fight like a Democrat. And we have to keep our base encouraged, and we have to keep going, because there's a couple of things that the Democrats run on. They always have to have a victim, and they always have to put fear. And they recycle them. If y'all notice, we're back to Governor Abbott sending these illegals to Chicago. It's racist now. We're back to the racism thing, and we're going to go over to, what are we going to do? LGBT. Now that's going to be your xenophobic, or it's about this. So they run on fear, and they run on always having a victim. What we have to do is we just have to separate emotion and politics, and we just have to fight fire like fire. Even with the school board members, there's a way to fight the left and win and not have to use any sort of violence.
Absolutely.
At all. Because from what I've learned, a lot of these people don't really know what they're talking about. They're not really educated in what's going on. They're getting their typical one-liners from CNN, MSNBC, and they're all saying the exact same thing. They're not digging into what's going on. They're paid to be there, or they're the activists or the parents that want to just be enraged about something. If people say, we have an election coming up in November, I don't want to vote. If you don't vote, you're surrendering.
Yes, please say that again.
That's what I tell people every single time. My mom's principal, I don't want to vote. Well, then you're going to surrender. And that's what we have to stop from happening. People don't have to be involved in politics to vote, but at least have them know what is going on. And if you never talk politics with them again, just make sure they get there in November and start voting some of these other folks out. The most important vote that a person in Texas can cast in November, I truly believe, is the school board members. Not even anything that has to do with Washington, D.C. or the government. It's the school board members.
It is. I was with Senator Hall three or 4 days ago, and I can't remember the name of the clinic. I'll get it. But he made a point to tell me that there's still a clinic in Dallas where Jeff Younger had his bout with his twin boys. This clinic right now is performing over 400 castrations and 400 double mastectomies on kids under 18 right now to change their gender. Our local Republicans in Austin are taking money from this clinic for campaign donations. Follow the money, folks. It's sad. It's heartbreaking. But this is what's happening because we are not paying attention. We are not doing our research. How can any sick human do that to a child under 16 years old? But it's happening. And it's happening right under our noses. And a lot of people don't even know it. You know, I told this story on Facebook. Mark and I have been doing private security at Luke Center in Dallas for the last 18 weeks. 3 Democrats passed me about 2 weeks ago, and they saw the posters out, and they show documentaries every Sunday. And I tell people that, you know, just because somebody doesn't think like you doesn't mean you don't have something in common.
Right.
So these 3 young people came up to me and started talking to me and asked me about literature and asked me about the posters, about sex trafficking and the border, all kind of stuff. I talked to those 3 people for 30 minutes. When they left, they knew they weren't Democrats.
Yeah. Awesome.
And they took every piece of literature on that table. They asked me for a card. They got my cell number. They got my email. And I've actually had some conversations with these young kids. All because I stuck my hand out and I took that chance. That's what we have to do. People can have their mind changed, but you got to put forth the effort to do that. That's all I'm asking you to do. Make the effort to reach out to somebody you don't know. Talk to 5 people a day you don't know. Ask them how their day's going. Buy them a cup of coffee. Pay for their bill in McDonald's. You don't understand what wonders that does for people and how many bridges it can gap when you do that. It makes a huge difference. That's what we as conservatives have to do to fix the mess we're in.
I asked a couple of people that are high up in the GOP about Texas. I said, a lot of Texans have a false sense of security, that we're safe here. Texas is very purple. Just because we redistricted does not mean that we are safe. Because let me tell you something, and actually one of the congressmen in Washington, D.C. goes, don't say this, Cam. I'm like, I'm going to tell people this. They didn't want me to because he's a senator from Texas. And he said, I said, well, redistricted. So that means Texas is safe a little bit longer. Even though Texas redistricts every, 10 years, roughly 10 years, we can redistrict every single year. Imagine if the Democrats take charge of Texas. Do you think that they will wait every 10 years to redistrict the state of Texas? Or will they be redistricting the state of Texas every single year? That's what's at stake. And he's like, well, I don't want you to remind the left. Well, no, I want to remind everyone this is what's at stake. The second a Democrat gets in charge of Texas, he can redistrict every single year and make the state bluer and bluer and bluer. Exactly what California did. California is so blue right now that they destroyed half the red areas. There'll probably never ever be a red state ever again because they've redistricted half the red area. Even though the night of the election at midnight when we were starting to look at the numbers at California, it was all red. The night of the election at midnight, the whole state of California was red. It was not blue. Typically, that's when the counting should have ended. Legally wise, California was red, but they've redistricted now to ensure that it's never going to be a Republican state ever again. And look what's happening now with Gavin Newsom. It's a disaster.
It is. You want to open up some Q&A?
Pardon?
You want to open up with some Q&A?
Let's do it.
Real quick, I want to recognize hopefully our future board members and our board members, Chad Green, David Schaefer's on the Allen City Council. Oh, well, Helen, how are you? Brittany Henderson is running for school board in McKinney. Miss Suzanne Harp in the back, ran for Congress. Who am I missing? Am I missing anybody? Oh, Mr. Herpin. Mr. Jim Herpin. How you doing? All right, guys, we're going to open up for some Q&A. My brother Morris got the mic. Y'all got some questions? Let's hear them. We keep talking if y'all don't hear any questions.
Your only punishment is longer.
Just a question about the SROs reporting to the school board. How can they have jurisdiction when they're not physically in a school? How can they have jurisdiction during the board meetings? Is that even legal?
Are you asking if it's illegal?
I'm asking, yeah, is it legal that they're there? Because my daughter didn't go to public schools, and we didn't have school resource officers when I was a kid, and I assumed that they were just supposed to be there at the school to break up fights and stuff like that. Why are they at the school board meeting? So,
Well,
I don't know why they're there, but is it legal?
Well, it's not illegal, but while they're there is to intimidate us.
Yeah, no, I know, right.
I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
That's the bottom line. I mean, my wife and I both retired from the school system. I spent 32 years in Plano and Frisco. They've had officers as long as I can remember, but the board meetings are specifically to intimidate us.
Right.
I mean, in McKinney, the last meeting wasn't bad, but there's been some meetings where we've averaged 18 to 20 SUVs at our board meetings. I mean, that's how bad it is.
They didn't have that many at Prosper even, and that was packed.
Well, they didn't have that many. They had, I want to say, 6 or 7 SUVs up there. But no, it's not illegal. I mean, they're still policemen.
KD, I can shine a little more light on that if you want.
Sure.
So it starts with the fact that certified law enforcement officers or commissioned law enforcement officers in the state of Texas are authorized to enforce the law, legally speaking, throughout the entire state. Then when you start talking the SRO program, which, by the way, I am overall very supportive of, you have a situation where there's a contract in place. And there's certain things that in order to get the SROs there to protect our children from mass shooters and other issues, in order to get our officers in there, unfortunately, we essentially have to agree to certain stipulations, which includes, well, basically enforcing law and abiding by certain specific guidelines. For instance, the school boards or the school districts own the properties they have. Well, if they want to have somebody served with a criminal trespass and barred from that building, taxpayer funded or not, it's the same thing as if you're at your home and you want your neighbor barred from your property. The officer comes out and he has to comply. He may not like it, he may think it's ridiculous, but he has to comply. The dangerous thing is when we start talking about school districts that have their own ISD police departments, because that is where, in my opinion, the red flag should really go up. When you have a city municipal police department, there comes a point where they can say, you know what, I know we have a contract, but there's nothing in the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure that allows me to do this. I can serve them with a criminal trespass, but as long as they leave peacefully, there's nothing else I can do here. Whereas an ISD police department is under the complete control of the ISD, with the exception of a little line in Texas law that says that their law enforcement capability is, I forget the exact term, but basically underneath that of the municipality in which they are attempting to enforce the law. So the city police can show up and still exercise a greater level of authority, but most of the time it never gets to that point.
Yeah. Thank you, David. And folks, just understand that what Kambree said about Peaster ISD, Lance Johnson, I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times when I was with Sept the Huffines. Look at what happened in Grapevine, Colorado the other day. That board completely shut the transgender, SEL, CRT, program stuff, they shut it down and said it's not happening in our school district. So don't think for a minute that these districts can't do something. They absolutely can do something. Do they want to do something is the question. And what we're finding out in every district I've been to in the last 3 or 4 months, they don't want to do anything. That's just a simple fact. They're not going to do anything until we start putting pressure on them. I mean, we had a good crowd in Prosper. I think there was about 240 people there. There were people waiting outside. And we let that board have it. And now they feel the pressure. And they're going to keep feeling the pressure because we're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes that they haven't seen yet. I pay Prosper ISD taxes, although we live in McKinney. So it is my business to be involved in it. You know, somebody banned me from joining a Facebook group in Frisco a couple of days ago. I worked in Frisco for a long time, as did my wife. That's my business. It's all of our business to get involved. And if people want to be like that, that's fine. But we're still going to make ground on what we're doing. Yes, ma'am.
So I moved to McKinney in March of 2020. One of the reasons was we heard how great the schools were for our grandkids. And of course, they won't be going to public school now. But my question is, and I have no idea, but it seems like the best way to go after anybody would be money. And since we moved to Texas, our house has gone up so much, which means the property tax that's going, when I read my tax bill, I could not believe how much goes to the school district. The school district itself, they've told us that the numbers have not gone up in years. It's staying the same. But their money is going, I don't understand. And I come from California where no matter what, your property tax never goes up. So it's really hard. But is there any way that we can not pay the taxes or get the rules changed? I never felt like this before.
Hi, Ella Holland from Allen ISD. And what's happening is we're getting less and less from the state of Texas. It was 17%, it's now down to 15, it's like 15.3% from the state. The federal government is cutting funds to us and also using some leverage in regards to like funding for food, federal funding for food, and wanting us to have certain policies in place. Otherwise, they're going to take our funding away. So you guys are making up the difference, the taxpayer. So that's what's happening, and I know you're seeing an increase, but we're struggling. If you look at our school budgets, we're struggling because we're getting less and less. We're being given, they want us to do full-time preschool, but they're only funding half-day. So we're making up the difference on that. You guys are, so that's kind of the situation that we're in. And until we get some new leadership in there, I think it's going to kind of stay that way.
Yeah.
I forgot to say something earlier. There is with the people I work with in Washington, D.C., their eyeballs are on the state and they're fighting a lot of stuff here. There is an organization that is about to have the wrath of God come down on them. And when I say they're infiltrating every aspect of our life, these people, I'm not going to say too much about it because there's just a lot of stuff brewing. But they're going and they're starting to infiltrate churches.
Yeah.
And they're infiltrating pastors, and that's going to be the key word, pastors. Eventually it'll come out more. You probably know what the organization I'm talking about. But it has caught a huge organization's attention in Washington, D.C., and we've been working on this for a long time. So after Labor Day, it's war. They're getting into the churches. So if you wonder why some of these churches are starting to do some very odd things, or they're starting to preach on more secular topics, that's because this organization is coming in, calling themselves pastors, and now they're getting into, right now they're in over 2,000 churches in the state of Texas. And it's pretty rough. So we're going to come down and do a huge investigation and find out what's going on, because they're sneaky, but they have officially infiltrated a lot of churches here.
Okay, I'm going to preface my question with a couple of points. First of all, I've been a poll watcher for 3 years, and so my niche in this area in Texas is to try to save our elections and make them fair. And so one of the things that you mentioned earlier was, to fight the left and, try to get more, I don't know if you use the term Republican, but maybe conservatives that are like-minded like us into office. The problem is we have a lot of people in office, even locally, that claim to be Republicans, but they're not acting like Republicans at all. They are acting exactly like Democrats. So today, when I came, I asked Kyle if it would be okay if I put some flyers out front. I encourage each of you to pick one up before you leave, because I have been attending Collin County Commissioners Court off and on for about a year and a half. And every week I'm growing the group that's attending. And what we're doing is we're talking about the vulnerabilities of our election machines. Our voting machines are rigged. I don't care what you think or say, they are. I know for a fact. I have the information. I can share it with you, each and every one of you. But these commissioners, I've asked week after week, not just myself, but others, to please put election integrity on the agenda so that we can have an open dialogue in court. Because if it's not on the agenda, we can't have an open dialogue. We only get our 3 minutes at the podium, and then we just leave, and they close the court and we go home. They do nothing about it. But the thing is I think the only way we're going to be able to maybe get these 5 Republican commissioners to put this on their agenda is we need to fill that courtroom every single Monday at 1 o'clock. There's about 100 chairs there. We're only filling about 20 of them a week. We need that courtroom filled unless Kyle or Kambree have a better idea. But we need these machines removed, and we need to get to paper ballots. Do you have any other ideas?
Yes.
Well, this came up a lot on Senator Huffines' primary governor run, and Senator Huffines called for paper ballots. But folks, this is where I tell you, this is never going to happen if we don't get involved. If we don't go to Austin, if we don't keep heat on our legislators, if we don't keep wearing them out with the same question and the same goals that we all have in our minds, it's never going to happen. We need to be at our, and I've lacked on this one, I've lacked on the county commissioner's court. I'm about to get involved in it because I've been so focused on the schools. But you have to go to these meetings if you have time. If not, try to watch it online at a later date. But it doesn't mean you don't get involved if you can't go. There's so many ways to get involved. And going to Austin, and Kambree can contest to this, going to Austin is very powerful because it lets the legislators know that you're watching them. If the same people go to a meeting, it's no different if the same people go to Austin. They don't care. They're getting kind of worn out on seeing the same people. That's why we need everybody involved in this. There's court pools that leave from this area all the time to go down and testify and sit in these hearings. That's what we have to do. Is it a long trip? Yeah, it is. But is it worth your child's future, your grandchild's future to get involved and go to Austin a couple times a month? Absolutely it is. So, Barbara, that's what we have to do. We have to fill the court.
We need to fill that courtroom. That's what I thought. So thank you for supporting that effort. But one other thing I wanted to mention is that, I was a delegate at the convention in Houston this year, and our number one item on the Republican platform is election integrity. But yet we have 5 Republicans running Collin County that are refusing to put election integrity on their agenda. Now, doesn't that concern any of you? To me, it's no different than having 5 Democrats in those seats, because they will not put it on their agenda, yet it's our number one item on our platform. So, we're not going to be able to get rid of the machines before the next election. We are 63 days away. 63 days away from the election. So what I'm asking everyone to do, because most of the cheating is happening through mail-in ballots and early voting, please don't vote until the day of the election and vote in person. That's the only thing we can do right now until we get rid of these machines. But we do need the machines gone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How many about raise of hands have met with your state legislator, know who your state legislators are? Pretty good group. If you haven't done that, you need to. You get online in your county, type your zip code in, and you can find out whoever represents you in Austin. That's where you need to start. Know who's on your school board, your council, your commissioners, get to know your sheriff, your constables, and your state legislators. If we don't know these people, we can't be involved, people. That's why we have to get to know them. Yes, sir, Mr. Green.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the legality of police officers removing people for really no reason in a school board meeting. And while that may be accepted law in some places, that is not supported under the Constitution anyway. There is no one that can remove any rights guaranteed under the Constitution except for a judge. And until you see that judge, they can't do that stuff. And what it's going to take on our part is taking them to court on that stuff, okay? Because I know several people that were told by a superintendent of a school district I might know about that he could make sure they couldn't come back to any school district property for a year without a hearing. That is not congruent with the Constitution. That needs to be done away with completely. So we're going to have to push it. And just so you know, Paul Davis says that if you want to challenge any of these things in federal court, it's $300 to file. We need to flood these public institutions that think they can just run over our rights. If they have power, they have it derived from the people. And it's going to cost us a little bit, and we have to be willing to get up and pay them, okay?
Mr. Callis, we've been talking about legislative things here on and off. You got any insight on what you tell people about the legislative process? Mark, right here.
Well, the legislative process is messy. So the first step, if you want to get anything done, is you got to meet your representative or your state senator. Now, we're fortunate in Collin County that we have a number of them, and they're fairly easy to find and get a hold of. Now, they probably won't be enthusiastic to talk to some of us, but they're obligated to do so. There's at least one that is actually quite gracious when you call. So, that being said, we have to treat them, and I realize how it's going to sound, but we have to treat them like children or pets. You reward them, and you encourage them, and you speak nice to them when they do good things.
I do.
And when they do bad things, you don't talk nice to them, and you don't pay them. Now, I will tell you that most of them don't want to take up the mantle and challenge anything. There's nothing to be gained. They're all in safe seats, well, all but one, and they don't have anything to worry about because they'll just coast the re-election for the next 8 to 10 years. So the only option we have is, when they're bad doggies, is to replace them, and that's what the primary is for. So if you're not a precinct chair, find out who yours is. If there's not one, take that seat. Show up at the executive committee meetings. Yes, I know the Republican Party is the stupid party, but the only other option is the evil party. So you work within what you got. And as a precinct chair, when I call, they kind of have to listen. And I call sparingly because they already know what I'm going to tell them, because I've made it quite clear many, many times. But the idea is there's more of us than there are of them. And in case you weren't aware, within the last month, we had censured John Cornyn. Within the next month or two, we are going to request that Collin County follow suit with the other 16 counties now that have declared an invasion on the border. This is the bare minimum we can do. This is how we put heat on our people that are supposed to represent us. And if you're not willing to make those phone calls, do an email, write a letter. Pay for somebody else to go down to Austin if you don't want to go to Austin. There are so many options. Pick your battle. Take advantage of it and make them remember they work for us, not the other way around.
I want to throw something into what she said earlier. There are a lot of Democrats that are starting to get concerned about election integrity, considering what happened in Houston with the voting stuff, machines going down during the primaries this last time. And it's starting to raise red flag. I know you talked about some of the Republicans here that are not putting election integrity on the ballot. We got briefed on this about 5 months ago to prepare for what the Republican Party and the Democrat Party were going to start doing, and this is from DC. And actually, of all days, Joe Biden is doing just that. He's separating the Republicans from the MAGA. There's a big split between the establishment Republicans, the traditional GOP, and the America First Republicans. There's a big split going in. So you have a lot of people that say that they're conservative and they're a Republican, but they're not MAGA. So they're not going to follow the whole kind of like the Trump Republican Party. That's a big thing that's happening right now. That's why you have the Mitch McConnells and you have everybody else coming in, especially putting their hand, and I know Suzanne and I talked about this, there was a huge footprint by all these guys coming into the state of Texas during the primaries because they were handpicking who they wanted to win the seats, and their guys won the seats. But that's what they're doing when it comes to the Collin County guys. They're not putting it on there. Some people are just going to resist doing anything that looks like anything Trump right now. Because they're kind of more with the Lindsey Grahams, they're more with the Mitch McConnells, they're more with the Liz Cheneys. There still is an internal fight going on in the Republican Party right now, even in Washington, D.C., between the establishment and the Trump Party. It's like a battle for power going on. So when I'm seeing people doing that and they're not putting the election integrity, it's not that they're not Republicans, it's just that they're not going to follow what Trump did. And they're trying to put they're doing a big division push right now. That's why tonight Biden was focusing on the MAGA. He's focusing on that because that's why he's trying to unify. Actually, he really is. They told us this conversation tonight was going to try to unify the regular GOP, old school Republicans with the Democrat Party. And they were going to push the MAGA aside because what they're trying to do is bring the Republicans back to the forefront so they can get all the America First votes out of the way. And so that's what they're doing, and tonight was a perfect example of them doing that. And I guarantee you that's why they're doing that here in Collin County. Because some people will not do anything if it has anything to look like what President Trump is pushing. Because they want to stay away from that. Why? Typically it's all about money. They will get the money from the
I'm
public.
going to pull a fast one on them because I've already reached across the aisle. I'm talking to lots of Democrats. So hopefully they'll start showing up.
Yeah, there's lawsuits actually in Houston.
I'm trying to get
There's
Democrats.
there's a lot of people, people in Houston that have filed a lawsuit with my girlfriend, and they're actually Republicans and Democrats going together against election integrity. It's starting to happen. It's just like with the parents not knowing what's happening in the schools. Some of the things are starting to happen to Democrats that are happening to the Republicans.
Right.
So now they're starting to step up. Even they don't agree with us on a lot of stuff. They will say this is not right, this is not fair, but they are in one big lawsuit right now in Houston with a bunch of Republicans to try to get election integrity, more stuff in legislature. Thank you. Next year.
Hi, I'm from California, and you are so spot on. I feel like I'm living in deja vu. I'm seeing it happen all over again.
But faster.
Yes,
and stronger.
And I think what's been going on in the schools is really kabuki theater. It happens at the local level. It just happened at the SBOE, where those SBOE members, there's 9 of them that are supposed to be Republicans out of 15. They had all the 600 pages to look through. Since January, they've been doing this process. They did not do due diligence. The people that are supposed to be standing up for us are not. And they actually witnessed our people, conservative moms, going up there and being mocked, ridiculed, and belittled, even an elderly woman, by these young punks, I call them, who think they can run an SBOE meeting and run the federal government's ideas and programs and indoctrination and shove it down our throats. So my question to you would be how to get the federal government out of here, even though we took the money for the COVID relief, which was a real nice scam on their part. I think we're not screaming loud enough, and we need to show up to local meetings. So school board meetings should be packed, council meetings should be packed, because I'm going to guarantee you the Democrats do show up, and that's why you have drag shows at local places. And you have pride parades in Frisco. But my question to you is, how do we start to unravel this, Kambree? What is do you have a vision or a goal to unwind this?
Are you talking about unwinding the federal government or unwinding what's going on in?
Well, I would say getting the federal government, because they're no longer independent school districts. They are not. They've been tainted. So all this indoctrination and everything, but it was little by little. It's gone through Texas. This isn't recent. This has been going on for a long time.
It's been going on since the 60s.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're ever going to get the federal government. If you take money from the federal government, whether you're Chrysler, GM, Ford, Tesla, whoever it is, unless you quit taking federal dollars, you're not gonna get the federal government out of your business.
Well, how about putting pressure on the school boards and just go up there at every meeting and say, you know what, you took the money, stop prostituting our kids and give the money back, because we have plenty of money.
I do that.
Give me money.
I do that. I
I've
do
heard
that.
you do it, yeah.
I mean,
Fourth Tuesday every month, be there at 6 o'clock. There's a bunch of us in there every week, every month, because we want to support Chad. Chad is a lone man standing up there. It breaks my heart every time to see the school board so disrespect this man. Show up at school board meetings. That's where you can start.
and folks, I'll say this. I've said this. I say it almost every day. What happens up in White Rock, Texas, where I was last night? What happens in Prosper, where I was a few nights ago? What happens in McKinney when I'm there once a month? All these cities affect you. Just because you do not live in White Rock doesn't mean it's not affecting you. This stuff is trickling way up north, it's trickling out east, out west, down south. I would say if you're in a 50-mile radius of any district, you should be at their school board meetings. You should be at their council meetings. This is how you get to know what different towns are going through, what different counties are experiencing, who their leaders are, where the money is, who they tied to. This is the only way that you find out what you really need to know. I don't go to White Rock just because I wanted to be gone 3 hours yesterday or spend $50 in gas. I did it because I care about my grandkids, 2 of which live in Salina. Has Salina started this crap? A little bit. I'll probably be going to those meetings next. But you have to get involved. You cannot sit behind a computer and watch what I post all the time and not do anything. I try to put out good information, but you've got to get your body off that sofa and skip that sitcom or skip that dinner like I do, or skip that movie or that date night. That's our date nights. My wife will tell you most of our date nights are doing this kind of stuff. That's what we do. When you finally understand the depth of the danger that your freedom and your liberty and your children and grandchildren are in right now, I hope you get the message, because this is not going away. This is only going to get worse. And each day they're chipping away at your sovereignty and your freedom and your liberty. Do you want your kids learning nothing but socialism, or your grandkids? If you don't, I would suggest you get involved. That's why I did this town hall tonight. I want to scare the hell out of you to the point where you're going to be at every meeting now on, because that's what you need to do. I do. You can ask my wife some mornings. I'm up till 1 o'clock, researching, reading, posting, talking on the phone in the park, because I'm pissed. I'm sick of this. You've got to get that fire under you and understand what's at stake. And then maybe, just maybe, you might talk to a stranger tomorrow and say, hey, did you know this? Did you know what this person was doing? That's the kind of attitude you got to have, people.
I don't think a lot of people are aware of what's going on. I still ask people all the time in the car driving down to Lock Springs to the mom store with a bunch of cheerleading moms. Are you aware of what's happening in Frisco? Are you aware? No, none of them know, and some of them work for the school district. You know, my pastor told us once, if you want to do something that's going to get people's attention, you got to just do something that's ridiculous. Here I am in California, petrified. The liberals, what are they going to do to us? I'm working the Trump campaign. I'm working, how are we going to get people's attention? And you know, I remembered, I was like, oh my gosh, my pastor told me I have to do something ridiculous. Well, by golly, I got 4,000 people on the beaches of Newport Beach with Trump flags. We did something ridiculous. We got in people's faces. Let me tell you. And Suzanne Hart and I were talking about this once. She's like, well, we were bouncing things off of the idea. She goes, what would you do if you want to get McKinney, Texas' attention and the books that are being banned? You go take a photo of the most graphic detail in a book that they're showing children, and you blow it up and you put it on every flipping corner of this city and watch how quickly it takes it down. And you let the parents drive by saying, this is in your child's elementary school. So that's how ridiculous you gotta be. That's how you have to fight fire with fire if you want to get the left. They don't want parents to know what's going on. You want parents to know what's going on, so put it right in their face. That's what I would do. I'd blow it up. Yes, it's graphic. Yes, they're going to be covering their children's eyes. But when they read on that sign that this is in your child's school, let me tell you something. Those parents are not going to be quiet. That's the attention they need. They just need it in your face if you can't talk to them.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Nick.
I'm looking around the room to see who's here. Is this live?
It is.
Can we turn it off for a minute? Because I want to say something private.
No,
No?
we're gonna stay live.
Okay. There's just people in McKinney that don't need to know what's going on, that the other side doesn't need to know what I'm going to say. So I'll refrain from saying it.
Well, when we're done, you answer your question.
I'll do that.
Yeah, let's ask you that.
I do want to ask one thing about the education, though. I have my grandchild's in Austin ISD. Y'all know me. Y'all have said this several times. They're in charter school now. They've got great parents who are involved in watching over everything. My grandkids went to school with a lawyer's letter in their pocket during COVID. Said, if anybody tries to put a mask on me, you got to call this lawyer. They were the only kids in that school without a mask. And their parents are great, but they're in charter school, 5th grade, it ends. And I'm fighting for school choice. I love you, Chad. I love you, Elle. I love what y'all are doing. But to me, if the public schools died tomorrow and went up in flames, I wouldn't care. I think the public schools are poison. But what I want to say is, how can we get school choice passed in the legislature so my grandkids have a choice after charter school ends? I don't want them in Austin Public Schools. Their parents don't want them in Austin Public Schools. Homeschooling is not a choice.
Right.
Private school is freaking expensive. Yet we're paying $10,000 a year in property taxes. How do we get that money to follow the child?
Your school
Well,
board.
they're considering giving $2.3 million back to retired teachers from the property taxes. And one of the things with school choice that was brought to my attention, we need the same rights as private schools. Private schools don't have to teach this woke ideology at all, but public schools have to. But I do believe that they're taking some money back out of that, and they're giving it back. What was it? One of them I definitely know was retired teachers, and what was the other one?
I'm trying to think what that
I
was.
can't remember. There was a couple of them.
Your school board members in McKinney just voted to direct ASB to kill freedom of choice. So your school board members, or your other school board members in McKinney, just voted in, I think it was June, to direct ASB to take your taxpayer funding and remove school choice. The reason why they want it removed is because they can remove it and they can teach whatever the hell they want to your kids. They can do as much of this gender modification stuff as they want to. They want it to be forced on you. And I'll just say this, I had a teacher approach me from McKinney today. Our war is not against the teachers. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of Christians that see the field that they're in teaching is a mission field, and they're trying to get into those kids and bring light to those kids. And so when we're talking about the school districts and these things that are going on, this is administrative crap that's happening. It's coming from the administration, okay? And it's coming from the people that are directors of, diversity and equity and all this stuff at the individual schools. These are the people that are pushing this. And to put this in correct perspective, when you're talking about the kids, you're talking about these people are willing to sacrifice these kids and the plan God has for their life so that they never see the king ever. They're never exposed. They can't ever follow him because they're going to be so twisted. And I don't want that to happen. I don't believe that has to happen. And as dark as it looks right now, if we will get up and start praying and get out there and get people's face and deal with this, we can overcome this.
Okay. I'm going one more. We're going to take one more from Rob, then we're going to probably call it here in just a minute.
Well, actually, we've already covered what Rob was going to.
Oh, we did? Okay.
I was just going to say that I don't think that, like you're talking about wanting school choice, we were part of a charter school and it was local, and there's a lot of corruption there too because they're not accountable to the people. And so we went through the grievance process because there was some abuse happening in the school, and they were so much more concerned about their reputation, they didn't want it to get out, and so they canceled my husband and I. They removed us from all platforms where we had a voice. My husband went out to protest, and they made him look like a complete idiot, saying he was a one-man protest, trying to bring light to the moms and dads in the community, saying, hey, there's some problems in the charter school. So when we were fighting it, they run it like a business. They run the charters like a business, and you have no voice. You don't have as much voice as you do in, with public schools. At least you can go to the board meeting. At least you can vote for these people to be off. And so I think that there needs to be like an overhaul of all education, so that there is accountability to everyone. Like the private schools, like you pay the private school, but with charter schools, you don't pay anything to attend a charter school. So, but they're not accountable like public schools.
Well, this is just my 2 cents, but the first thing we need to do with public schools is abolish the TEA, start over.
Yes.
I mean, that's my opinion, but we're gonna take one more here.
So a couple of days before the Prosper ISD board meeting, I sent out about 7 emails to all board members, and only 2 of them responded, and one of the member was newly elected, and he seems very genuine, but the other one actually copied. It's very generic. It's gibberish.
I saw it.
You saw that, right? And James Pope actually got the same one.
Mm-hmm.
And when I received those emails, I wonder what I could do to amplify that, because if parents know which ones needs to be removed or replaced, and put pressure on these trustees, perhaps maybe their actions will change. And I don't know whether I could do anything on social media to expose them. I did some research on some of the trustees. They have special interests. I mean, one of the guy that's just took on the secretary position, he is actually a banker, and he's the banker that works to fund the school project of building those schools. So anyway, it's very dark, and I don't know if it's safe to be fighting to fight this battle up front. But I think people are waking up that when you choose a trustee, you have to check their background.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do, and I've been doing it. I'm gonna expose them. I know 2 people personally on that board. If I see something that's not right, yeah, I'm gonna expose them. I pay tax dollars in that city. Why wouldn't I expose them? This is the only way, and I'll say this, Mark started a Facebook page for me, what, a month ago? Kyle KD says for Texas. That page it's not a lot for somebody like Kambree, but we've got over 1,300 members in a month. You know why we have that many members? Because we put the facts out daily. We expose people. We have the courage to stand up. We're not backing down. If these people if they don't have the best interest of the children in mind first, they need to go. These board members make excuses they can't say anything right now. The hell with that. If this happened to their kid, are they going to say something? They're going to sit back and say nothing. They're going to speak up. Absolutely expose them. We have to fight fire with fire right now if we're going to get this state back. And Kambree mentioned this a couple of times. This is why Democrats beat the fire out of us, because they fight back. We have to get that courage in our body and in our mind and in our heart. And we have to say enough's enough. If you do something unethical, or you're not protecting these children, which you were elected to do, then you damn right expose them. Absolutely.
I gotta let something out. I'm not gonna say what. There's something huge in the works from DC. And I'll tell you this. hopefully within the next 7 months, there will be a database of every school board member in every state, in every city. And they will have a bio of who they are, what they're running on, what they stand for. And everyone in the United States will be able to access. So you'll be able to go to McKinney, Texas. It's going to scare the snot out of them because they don't realize how massive this is and what's being created right now. But they're on notice. So we'll be able to find out every single thing about every school board member in the whole United States of America. And it's going to be huge because now they wanted to insert themselves into politics. Welcome to the game.
I just want to say one last thing here about the upcoming painful elections that we're going to go through. I'm a precinct chair. I've also signed up to be I always say DVR, is volunteer deputy registrar. So it's very easy to do. You can do it online. I've now registered to do Denton County and Collin County. I've already registered a ton of people. Last Sunday we put together, like Vince Hammer, friend, put together like 6 churches, Fellowship Church. 6 of us were there in Frisco. I'll be at Elevate Church too. I'm doing my mail lady and her mother and several post office people that have not registered to vote. Y'all, you would not imagine how many people are not registered to vote.
Yep.
Wow. And I have some of my friends that saw us there at the Fellowship Church, and now they're going to their churches to say, why are we doing this here? You know, we can't go to Tom Thumb because I shouldn't say what I'm going to say because we're still on camera. But it's another little thing that we could do. It closes on October 11th, but if we can become registrars, it's an online thing, and then you go get your paperwork, and that's it. It's important. We need to get more people registered.
It is, Jackie. Folks, there's so many things you can do. Precinct chair, election judge, poll greeter. There's a million things you can do, and there's plenty of us in this room that can answer all those questions. But just please, if you take one thing away, keep your children and your grandchildren in mind when you go about your daily life. It's not always about the fancy car and the big house and the fancy events. This is what I do because I have a passion for it. And I know not everyone has the same passion I do. But God has blessed me. I'm retired. I can do this. And I can still have fun in my life. But I hope and pray when I wake up every day that I change at least one mind. I save at least one child. That's what you have to do. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, next week I'm sitting down and filming with Mama Bears Rising. Y'all need to write that name down, Mama Bears Rising, because they are the resource hub of if you need to file a FOIA request and try to find out and get information from the school, they have resources on their website. They told me about a place called The Shack. They're like, you need to go check out The Shack. I'm like, what's The Shack? The Shack is where you can find out what they're teaching health. So Mama Bears Rising is an incredible organization. These women are fighting all over the state of Texas. They're growing, they're getting bigger. They're finding the school board members, they're replacing them. They're getting groups together and they're saying, hey, we've got this school board member, we've got to get out. Do you have a candidate we can bring in and we can replace them? So these women are literally fighting fire with fire. They're complete pit bulls and they're incredible. So they have the best resource if you want to know how to go find out every bit of information and how to file it, what email to send, how to send it. They have all the information there. The best resource place.
And we'll put some groups on our social media feeds, but follow Kambree she's Cam TV on Twitter. Follow Texas Scorecard, Michael Quinn Sullivan, Kambree, Aaron Anderson, Brandon. There's so many people you can follow there, but get their newsletter because it has a lot of good people, a lot of good events in there. Keep you updated on legislative stuff. But guys, we appreciate all of you coming out and taking time out of your evening. We hope this was beneficial to y'all, and we really appreciate y'all coming. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you.